What if everything you thought you knew about Christianity was only half the story?
The stage lights cast a warm glow over the hall. The audience sat in hushed anticipation, the kind of silence that feels alive with expectation. Around the world, millions had tuned in, eager to witness a discussion that had already been called the most unexpected of the year. On one side of the stage was Mel Gibson, Hollywood legend, a man whose creative brilliance and deep spiritual convictions had left a mark on cinema and culture alike. Opposite him sat President Ibrahim Traoré, the young and resolute leader from Burkina Faso, a figure who had jolted global politics with his uncompromising stance against neo-colonial forces. What could possibly bring these two figures together? The answer was faith, yet no one truly understood that what was about to happen would transcend mere conversation. It would be a confrontation with hard truths. The moderator gave a concise introduction, then stepped aside. Gibson leaned forward slightly, gripping the edge of his chair, his gaze intense. "Mr. President," he began, his voice measured and calm, "the world sees you as a revolutionary, a champion of African liberation, but few understand the foundation of your beliefs. Let me ask plainly, what does Christianity mean to you, and what does it represent for your people?" The room felt even quieter after his words, as though the question itself had sliced through the air. The cameras moved closer to Troy, who sat tall and composed, his uniform crisp, his eyes steady and sharp. He paused thoughtfully before replying. "Mel," he said slowly, "that question runs far deeper than politics. For us in Africa, Christianity is not merely a religion. It is a story woven with both chains and freedom. It tells of how faith was sometimes used to oppress us, yet also how truth has the power to liberate. Many forget that Christianity did not arrive on our shores with colonizers. It was present centuries before Europe even fully grasped it. The Ethiopian eunuch in the Acts of the Apostles brought the gospel to African lands while the church was still young. North Africa gave rise to some of Christianity's earliest and most brilliant thinkers: St. Augustine, Tertullian, Origen. So when people claim that Africa only encountered Jesus through colonization, they are mistaken. Africa already knew him. What colonial powers introduced was not Christ, it was control. A murmur of surprise swept through the audience. Gibson's brow furrowed as he leaned in, captivated by Troy's words. Troy continued, his voice gaining quiet intensity. "This is where the suffering began. Colonizers wielded the name of Christ to justify slavery, to dismantle civilizations, to break nations. They held the Bible in one hand and a weapon in the other. They preached humility while taking land, preached submission while building empires on African lives. Many Africans, desperate for hope, clung to a version of Christ that had been distorted, stripped of liberation, and turned into a tool of oppression." The hall fell silent, the weight of the words pressing down on everyone. "That is why," Troy continued, his tone firm, "Christianity for many Africans remains tied to trauma. But here is the liberating truth. Jesus of Nazareth was never a servant of empire. He was its greatest opponent. He was crucified by those in power because he refused to bow to corruption. He stood with the oppressed, touched the marginalized, and proclaimed freedom for the captives. That is the Christianity Africa must reclaim, the Christianity of liberation, not of chains." Applause erupted, some in the audience rising to their feet, moved to tears. Gibson sat back, visibly shaken, absorbing the depth of the statement. For years, his films had explored faith, sacrifice, and redemption. But here was a president, not a clergyman, cutting straight to the heart of history. Troy pressed further, his voice steady and unwavering. "Let me clarify. Too many have mistaken Jesus' message for the ambitions of empires. Too many churches preach prosperity while their communities struggle. Too many leaders claim Christ, yet deny justice. That is not the gospel. If your faith comforts you while others suffer, it is not the faith of Christ. It is a counterfeit." The words landed with the force of truth. The audience absorbed them, some nodding, some silent in shock. Gibson's hands clenched lightly as he processed the intensity of the claims. Then, Gibson finally asked, "What constitutes true Christianity?" Troy leaned forward slightly, his voice calm and precise. "True Christianity is not about power, wealth, or dominion. It is about sacrifice. It is about standing with the vulnerable, caring for orphans, welcoming strangers, feeding the hungry. It is about living the Sermon on the Mount, where Christ said, 'Blessed are the meek, Blessed are those who hunger for justice. True faith is not about rising above others. It is about bending down to serve them. Thunderous applause filled the hall again. Gibson looked down, eyes moist, the weight of reflection upon him. He finally spoke, his voice soft. "Mr. President, you are voicing truths that many clergy dare not utter. Why is that?" Troy replied, his tone heavy with both sorrow and resolve. "Because the gospel has been replaced by comfort," he said. "Too many fear-losing influence or donations. But Christ said, 'Take up your cross and follow me.' He never instructed building palaces in his name. The truth is simple but demanding. Christ calls us to serve, not to rule. That has always been dangerous to those in power. It was dangerous 2,000 years ago, and it remains so today." The studio was tense, every ear straining to catch his words. Troy's voice, quiet yet powerful, continued. "Jesus does not belong to any nation. He belongs to the world, to the oppressed, to the suffering. Anyone claiming him for empire deceives the world. If the church truly followed him, no child would starve tonight, no war would be fought for greed, and divisions of race, tribe, or tongue would dissolve. Christianity, as it is known today, must change. Christ did not come to make us religious. He came to make us free." The audience erupted in standing ovation. Shouts, claps, and tears mixed together. Gibson rose slowly, visibly moved. The cameras captured Troy's composed face, calm yet piercing, as if he had simply spoken the truth of his heart. But the energy in the room said otherwise. This was more than a conversation. It was a revelation. For the first time in decades, Gibson experienced a clarity that went beyond doctrine. Christianity, he realized, was not about argument, structure, or control. It was about embodying a radical love. Love that forgives, protects, sacrifices, and embraces even those who oppose you. As the applause began to fade, Gibson's mind raced, replaying every word Troy had spoken. He felt a mix of awe, guilt, and revelation. For years, he had wrestled with faith on screen, portraying its beauty and its contradictions. But here was a living leader presenting its essence with precision and courage. "Mel," Troy began again, his tone calm but deliberate. "The problem with religion today is not that it is false, but that it has been weaponized. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they all hold divine wisdom. Yet when people replace love with the desire for power, the message is twisted into something monstrous. It no longer resembles the God it claims to serve." Gibson's brow furrowed. He had long questioned whether institutional religion truly carried the heart of Christ's teachings. "Ibrahim," he said carefully, "Christianity has always proclaimed itself as the one true faith. Isn't that what makes it unique?" Troy smiled faintly. "Truth does not fear comparison," he said. "Truth welcomes dialogue. It is not threatened by other voices. The strength of Christianity does not lie in claiming exclusivity, but in demonstrating transformative love. Love that can turn enemies into friends. When Jesus prayed, 'Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do,' he revealed a power beyond vengeance, a compassion beyond hatred. That is the Christianity the world has largely forgotten." Gibson exhaled slowly, his eyes reflecting a storm of thoughts. "Then why," he asked softly, "has such truth been buried beneath politics, corruption, and greed?" Troy's response was unwavering. "Because humanity often craves power more than God. People build churches not to uplift souls, but to expand influence. They exploit the name of Christ for profit, speaking of heaven while creating suffering on earth. And yet," he paused, his voice softening, "the true spirit of Christianity cannot be extinguished. It burns in the widow who feeds the orphan, in the poor man who shares his last morsel of bread, in every soul that loves without expecting anything in return. That is the Christianity that endures. It is unstoppable, unbreakable, eternal." The room was hushed, hanging on every word. Gibson's hands trembled as he absorbed the depth of the message. For decades he had struggled with the contradictions of faith. Yet here, through the words of a Muslim leader, he saw the essence of Christ's teachings more clearly than ever. "Ibrahim," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you speak as though Christ himself is speaking through you." Troy shook his head gently. "No, Mel, I'm only reminding the world of truths it already knows but has overlooked. I may be Muslim, but I am not blind to the light Christ brought. He was never a weapon for politics. He was a bridge for humanity. And if Christians themselves rediscover this, then Christianity will not remain a religion. It will become a movement of love, a revolution that transforms hearts. Silence fell over the room. Gibson lowered his gaze, tears streaking down his face. For the first time, he felt the gospel not as doctrine, rules or rituals, but as a living fire, vibrant and unstoppable. "Ibrahim," he whispered, "you have completely changed my understanding of faith." Troy placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then share that truth with the world, Mel. Let your voice reveal that true Christianity is not a brand, not a denomination, not a political tool. It is love in action. It is courage in the face of oppression. It is forgiveness when retaliation seems easier. That is the faith Christ taught. That is the faith the world needs to witness again." Gibson rose slowly, his body still trembling. "The world may not be ready for this message," he murmured. "Then let it come," Troy replied firmly. "I fear not those who can harm the body, but cannot touch the soul. The greatest leaders in history were not those who clung to power, but those who risked everything for truth. If Christ could bear the cross without fear, why should any of us tremble before mortal threats?" The energy in the room was electric. For Gibson, it was as if a veil had been lifted. Everything he thought he understood about Christianity, its divisions, politics, and historical battles, seemed to dissolve. What remained was raw, undeniable truth: love, forgiveness, sacrifice, and radical courage. That night, Gibson could not sleep. Troy's words echoed in his mind, not as speeches but as revelations. He realized that Christianity was not about triumphing over others or erecting grand cathedrals. It was about embodying Christ's fearless love, love that embraces even those who inflict pain, that serves even when mocked, that sacrifices without expectation. And in that understanding, Gibson knew this encounter would not merely change him. It had the potential to reshape the world's understanding of faith. Christianity, when lived as Troy described, transcended religion. It became a force for justice, compassion, and unity. As the studio lights dimmed, Gibson turned to Troy, voice breaking. "You have given me a vision I never thought possible. A vision of faith as it was meant to be, alive, fearless, transformative." Troy nodded, his expression calm and unwavering. "Then go, Mel. Carry this message far and wide. Speak not to divide but to illuminate. Remind the world that Christianity is not a tool for domination. It is a revolution of love." For the first time, Gibson felt the full weight of the gospel's power. He felt unburdened, enlightened, and most importantly, called to act. He understood that true faith demands courage, compassion, and sacrifice. It calls us to serve, to forgive, to defend the oppressed, and to love without hesitation. "Mel," Troy said softly, "remember, Christ does not belong to any one nation, any single church, or any political agenda. He belongs to the broken, the suffering, and the oppressed everywhere. Anyone claiming him for power is deceived. If the church truly embraces this, there will be no child hungry, no war fought for greed, no divisions of race, tribe, or tongue." Gibson's hands were clasped tightly, his face illuminated by understanding. The truth had never been so clear, so urgent. For the first time in decades, he felt as though he truly grasped the essence of Christ's message, a faith not of convenience but of radical, fearless, transformative love. As the night drew to a close, the audience, now silent, absorbed the weight of the moment. Cameras captured Gibson's stunned expression and Troy's unwavering gaze. The conversation was over, but its impact would resonate forever. This was not a dialogue that could be forgotten. It was a revelation. And now, dear reader, if you want to continue witnessing these truths unfold, be part of conversations that challenge, inspire, and awaken, make sure to subscribe. Don't miss the insights that can change how we see faith, leadership, and humanity itself. Hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey toward understanding and truth.